I have been forced to create this content against my will because I'm a product of capitalism. This is the show where I look at something, some creative projects I've been involved with in the past and talk about it, or something I think is cool and I talk about it. I've got some, there are some cool things on the horizon from people I care about, and I'm very excited to talk about stuff that I haven't been involved with. But that's not yet. That's soon. I don't actually know what I'm going to talk about today. This whole series exists because of the way YouTube monetization works. The goal here truly is for me to keep this channel monetized. That's why this content exists. That's all it is. I truly don't care if these videos get viewed, although it is interesting that they have been getting viewed. But whatever. Let's talk about my podcast. This button, I think. The Conversation Hat Podcast. You see how it's my face here? That's because that's my show. The Conversation Hat Podcast is my most consistent creative endeavor. It wasn't always my most creative. It wasn't always my most consistent creative endeavor, but it certainly is now by a long margin. A long margin? Yeah, fine. The podcast is a show that is now weekly. It wasn't always weekly, but it's definitely now weekly. Me and my good friend Ben, we hang out for 30 to 40 minutes. We pull questions out of a hat. We do our best to answer them, and that's the podcast. We've been very lucky with some of the guests we've had. By the time this video is live, we'll have published an episode of the podcast with Tez Ilyas, who's a wonderful comedian. He's doing celebrity SAS, I think, at the moment, and cool stuff like that. He's on tour. He's probably one of the biggest big shots we've had on the podcast, which is very cool. Let me open up. This is Podchaser, a website that's quite good at collecting podcast information. We've had Tantacruel, who, if you've spent any time on Music Theory YouTube, you'll be familiar with. He's been on the podcast a couple times. There are more episodes to come. Trigger, who started Swamp-Lesque, which is the Green Ogre, but a burlesque show. Ricky Lindholm, that was a big episode. We had Michelle Brazier from Double Denim Auntie Donna. We've had a couple episodes with her. Those are both really cool. We've had a lot of cool ass guests, basically. People that we're friendly with, like Richard Jackson from Valverde, Type T Bleed. It's a good show. I'm a fan of our show. I think it's really fun. I think it's not particularly popular, and I'm fine with that. I know for sure that the only way to actually grow and have a successful show long term is committing to a consistent schedule. So we started publishing episodes in January of 2014, so close to 8 years ago, right? If my math is like 7-8 years, whatever. The first couple of years, I'm going to go big screen. The first couple of years, we had a fairly inconsistent schedule. I think we had a monthly episode and then a monthly non-episode or something like that. I think initially the weekends were the episodes were fortnightly, and then we'd do like monthly 2 episodes a month, a secret Patreon one for Patreon supporters, and then a live stream or something. So it was nearly like a monthly. It was a weekly product for us, but like people online would only get like 2 or 3 things. It took us like 3-4 years to get into a weekly schedule, but the weekly schedule has been in place for some time now and has been pretty good, and that's sort of where we've seen the most growth. So like, yeah, it's definitely about consistency. We also took a couple breaks on the show, which we should not have done at any point. The conversation has been great for a handful of reasons. It is really fun to do. I really like doing the podcast. The episodes with me and Ben are, I think, really quite funny, and also the episodes are funny. They're fun to do. They're, in terms of like what we need to put into them, quite low impact, which is very helpful. And we've also had the opportunity to talk to like genuinely some of our comedy heroes. Like Tony Law was a very early episode we were able to do. Like I said, Tez Ilias, Tantacruel, Michelle Brazier, who else? Suze Kempner, Izzy Lawrence, like Richard Sandling, Ashens. We did an episode with Ashens. He was like our 50th episode or something. So it's been a great opportunity to meet really cool people that we like. Aside from enjoying doing the podcast itself, because I work in marketing, mostly content marketing, it's been really handy to say, look, this is a show that I've been involved with for 7 years. This is the direction we've evolved the content in. If you want an editor for your project, I can make stuff look like this, for example. So like, you know, the TikTok videos, the Instagram reels, the YouTube shorts, the stuff that you need to do an audio podcast. It's quite good to have like a massive show reel for like the last 7 or so years. We're not very big. We're not very popular. I'm fine with that. Genuinely, I don't care, because the show is a lot of fun to do. We have a little cohort of Patreon supporters who've been very generous with their time and their income for the last few years. So like we have a small but super attentive audience, yeah. And that's, you know, we've been able to use it as a platform from which to launch like a few sort of comedy shorts. We've had some interesting collaborations with like Valverde Broadcasting. Oh, my face is in the way. Go away, me. We've done episodes with them in the past, like a fair few years ago. But you know, something else that's really cool about the Conversation Hat is the amount of opportunities it's given us outside of the podcast. Because we've been going for so long, like people want to talk to us about how to do a podcast long term. So I've been able to do a few things with like BBC Upload. Historically, I've been on like BBC Radio Cambridgeshire a few times to talk about like creative stuff, comedy, podcasting. You know, it's quite cool to be wanted in that way. I've also done like odds and ends of articles about podcast equipment, stuff like that. So it has been like really helpful in terms of the, you know, if you commit to something long term and you stick to it and people can see, damn, every week they have a new thing. That seems so basic, but I think people who make stuff get how tricky that is. So if you stick to something long term, opportunities do just sort of emerge. Oh, I mean, I should probably talk about like what the show actually is. So the show is me, Ben, and oftentimes a guest of some kind. We pull questions out of a hat and we do our best to answer them. That's all it is. Sometimes the questions are interesting and philosophical. Sometimes the questions are just stupid non sequiturs. Sometimes people are asking us for financial advice, which is not a good idea. We pull questions out of a hat and we try to answer them. The meta narrative is that the hat is an eldritch being. We are enslaved to its will. When we had breaks for between series, which we don't do anymore, we bank episodes and we release them weekly. When we did have breaks between series, the narrative was that because the hat is displeased with us and has put us in hell for a bit, so that's why we can't do episodes. It's not the case anymore. I wouldn't say the hat is pleased with us. The hat is, if anything, more angry with us than ever. So that's why we just have to keep churning out the content, because of how angry we've made the hat. I really like the stuff that we've been able to do on top of Conversation Hat. So we've got this weekly show that comes out, and we've got like interesting guests to like bring in new people and evolve over time. But it's like the ancillary stuff that I particularly enjoy. We do a monthly live stream as well. So stuff like Kernel of Truth is something I'm really proud of. A little like 8-minute short film about Ben being a conspiracy nut. This 2-minute advert we did for our new line of merch is one of my favorite things that I've ever created. We've made music like Hands Are Weird. I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 videos for Hands Are Weird, which is another thing. Like, I'm a fan of iteration, so I thought it was fun to do that. Yeah. What else do I want to say? I mean, that's sort of it. The stuff on this website only goes back to 5 years ago. Our episodes with Steve McNeil and Simon Kane. So if you're looking at this going, well, that's not 7 years worth of stuff. We used to be on the Odd Creative channel. Or what is now the Odd Creative channel. I think it's Stabbed Panda TV, I think is the URL. Yeah, we used to do like conversation hat stuff on here. I think we did. Yeah, no, we definitely did. Have I made it private? Okay. We definitely did. Am I losing my mind? No, we did for sure. Maybe I've made it unlisted. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, that's the Conversation Hat podcast. It's a podcast, so it's available in all the places that you get podcasts. Just look for the Conversation Hat, and it'll look like it'll look like this. It'll be pink and orange because that's what the show is. We do have episodes on YouTube since we started doing like actual video stuff. We're up to date. 231 is the most recent episode at time of recording. Going back to 224, and then there's a handful of episodes that we put out prior to that because we just weren't trying hard with video. Whenever I have time, who knows when that is, I'm going to go back and eventually try to like fill in gaps. Because I think it must have been like 200 or so. Yeah, I think 200-ish that we started doing video. So we should be able to fill in the gaps here, I would hope. And then the other 200, I don't know. I think we're thinking about making everything up to episode 50 private, so that only our Patreon supporters can listen to it. Just because the show is so different now to how it was. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I want to start at number 1, don't. I mean, do what you want to do, but I would suggest no. Listen to a couple of the more recent episodes, because that's what we evolve into, and that's the route we're going to go down. So if you really like episode 1, you've only got like 50 of those, and then there's several hundred more episodes that are weird and unpleasant for you. So listen to our most recent episodes, or if you like Tantacruel, Zionic, Richard Sandling, Miss Jackie, Professor Elemental, if you like those people, Ashens, probably statistically, if you're watching this on YouTube, which you are, you'll like Ashens, I would assume. If you like those people, go find their episodes, and then if you like, go listen to the more recent ones. Don't start at 1. I see the appeal, but we're not like a structured business podcast. We're 2 weirdos who shouldn't be allowed near microphones, but we bought them, so they're ours, so we can. Yep. Bye.